Welcome. Your library works hard to curate valuable online resources for students and faculty to use to produce quality research results. But what if students struggle to use primary sources and historical documents? Gale listened as librarians told us about the challenges of teaching information literacy skills. Today, I'll be telling you about an amazing new feature we're rolling out to Gale Digital Archives. It's called a Learning Center, and it's going to change the way that you teach and change the way your students do historical research. Let's meet Ellie. Ellie is a third-year history student. She's a Gale Student Ambassador in the UK. Ellie is most interested in 14th and 15th century European studies. In a blog article she wrote for Gale's website, Ellie described a big difference she noticed in her own education. As a youngster, history assignments at school tapped into student creativity. Perhaps her teacher organized Victorian costume parties, or the children played pioneer games. In high school, history textbooks included some primary sources, leading the student towards the right answer in order to pass a test. After these experiences, history class at the university level could feel overwhelming at first. Ellie was asked to search out primary source content as part of her essays and put the sources into context and provide her own analysis of the topic. This change from history student to historian can even be a challenge for many graduate students as well. Hearing about many students with needs like Ellie's, Gale spent a year investigating a solution to this challenge. We wanted to hear real stories from real people to uncover the truth about their experiences working and teaching with primary sources. After surveying over 170 instructors, librarians, and students, we discovered barriers to using digital primary sources in coursework. In over 25 follow-up interviews, Gale gathered more insights from faculty, librarians, and students. We knew that we could better support instructors in getting students understanding how to critically analyze sources and better orient students with how to use a digital database so they could confidently undertake their own research. A solution was born. In fall 2021, we launched Learning Centers, which provide comprehensive teaching and learning support for faculty and students. This is an all-in-one intuitive instructional tool that helps students get acclimated with a primary source database. Following the Guidelines for Primary Source Literacy developed by ACRL and SAA, the Learning Centers are organized to guide researchers through 4 key workflow steps: conceptualize, find, read, and use. Each workflow section features detailed instructional content that's engaging and accessible. Everything has been carefully selected to create an intuitive and supportive learning environment for all users, from those who have never used a digital database before to those who have been working with primary sources for their entire career. The first section of the Learning Center helps users conceptualize, generate, and refine their research question. They'll learn more about the archive itself in the About the Archive section. Information here will reveal when the archive was released, the archive sources, what's included, cataloging notes, and other helpful explanations for the researcher to understand what they'll find in the archive. Sample topics and searches provide a guaranteed entry point for students and new researchers. You can use these samples in your teaching, and usually you'll find more than one suggested theme to explore. In addition, sample questions are provided at both the novice and advanced level. These questions could easily guide an educational activity or even form the basis for a research essay. Gale is well aware that historical content may be offensive or problematic for today's audiences. Gale primary sources present artifacts as they existed without manipulation. Gale believes that studying the historical context of a topic, including potential prejudices or biases imposed by society or authors, allows students and researchers to engage in critical conversations, make important comparisons and connections, and enable greater understanding to inspire change and cross-cultural awareness. The content advisory note will alert users of the types of sensitive materials they may encounter in the archive. The second section of the Learning Center helps users employ effective search and browse strategies to find relevant sources. Basic search and advanced search tips are shared, and key filters are explained. Language and terminology teaches the researcher to consider different phrases and spellings when choosing search terms. Boolean operators, wildcards, and other specialized techniques are explained in general search tips. We also highlight how users can browse the archive to reach content. Users can also read about how the topic finder and term frequency text analysis tools work. The third section of the Learning Center helps users identify and understand key information in primary source documents and examine and evaluate the viewpoints, biases, and historical context while they read. There is a clear explanation of how optical character recognition, or OCR, works. The metadata and full citation section explains the kinds of descriptive information available about the archive documents, such as publication title or document type. In addition, the editor may provide other useful background information here, such as an explanation of British royal titles or military ranks that are found in the text. The periodicals or newspapers as sources section would be very helpful as part of an information literacy lesson. There are notes about the history of journalism and a number of questions to help researchers critically assess the source, whether at the individual article level, across one issue of the publication, or looking at change over time. There are introductory novice questions as well as deeper advanced questions, any of which are sure to lead to interesting class discussions and get students thinking. Lastly, the read section will contain at least one research example. This is a curated example with an overview of a topic, sample documents to explore, suggested searches to try, and a selection of research questions, again, both novice and advanced. If you are looking for a ready-made lesson plan of sorts to use with a class, I definitely recommend going to the research examples in the read section. The fourth section of the Learning Center gives users tips on using the archives and incorporating it in their research. There's an overview of Gale citation tools. The copyright and reuse section goes over the various options for downloading, saving, and going back to specific articles. We also provide guidelines for reproducing images and sources. Finally, adding additional context and rich background materials, the essays are examples of how subject matter experts think about, discuss, and incorporate primary sources into their work. If you've used Gale primary sources in the past, you may remember seeing these essays in the research tools section. We have now moved the essays into the Learning Center. Next, I'd like to show you two examples of learning centers within Gale Digital Archives. We'll start by taking a look at this digital archive, Refugees, Relief and Resettlement, Forced Migration and World War II. From the homepage of the resource, there's one button to click to reach the Learning Center. You'll find that here on the right-hand panel in the same toolbar as the Collections, About, Search History, and Get Link buttons. The Learning Center has a light bulb on it, and you simply click to reach the Learning Center. While the Learning Centers are unique according to which database or digital archive you are using at the time, the general format and navigation of the Learning Center is uniform. In the center portion of the screen, you can see the 4 steps laid out, as well as links to the direct sections within. And on the left, we have a menu with the same navigational information. Let's click through the different sections of this Learning Center. In About This Archive, we have an explanation, sometimes this can be quite lengthy, explaining the background of what this archive is, what it contains, and any other notes about how it came to be. About the source collections, we'll explain some of the different libraries that host the original source materials when applicable. Sample topics and searches is a nice place to start if you're looking for a way for researchers or students to just dive into the resource. We have several different topics suggested, and for each topic, there's a short explanation as well as built out search tips and sample searches to try, and those research questions at the novice and advanced levels. You can definitely use these as part of your instructional materials or as examples for students and researchers. The content advisory will vary depending on which resource you're looking at, and will call out any specific topics or sensitive areas to be aware of. In the find workflow step, we have basic search and advanced search tips, and some more examples. If there are unique filters available within the resource, they'll be mentioned here. So for example, this resource lets you limit on a specific refugee population you're looking at, and you won't necessarily find that specific search filter in other Gale resources. The language and terminology section will bring up any things for the researcher to think about, different spellings to try, different phrases, because the words that we might use to describe that topic in history today might have been different when it was actually happening. General search tips are provided to help teach students more advanced ways of constructing a search. The Browse the Archive has information about browsing into the content. Our Gale resources are fully searchable and designed for very easy basic searches and advanced searches, but they're also designed with the browser in mind. This would be the equivalent of grabbing a physical box of archive documents and starting to flip through it. So we have notes about browsing the archive. When available, we have a link to the title list to download, including what documents are inside of it, as well as an explanation of topic finder and term frequency tools. In the read section, we have the explanation of OCR and how that is incorporated in the resource. More notes about the metadata and citations available within the content. Again, if there are specific filters available, they will be explained here. And then the wonderful research example. Each learning center will have at least one learning example with a topic, one or more recommended documents to explore, and also suggested research questions, again, at the novice and advanced levels, plus recommended sample searches to try. Finally, in the fourth section, in views, we have notes about citation tools, copyright and reuse instructions, and essays. These essays are written by subject matter experts and will illustrate how that topic matter expert thinks about a particular theme, and it will show and illustrate how this researcher uses the primary source documents as part of their own research. Okay. Now, once you are within the Learning Center, if you want to go back into the database itself, into the digital archive to perform one of those recommended searches or start diving into the material, it's very easy to do. Simply click the banner up here in the upper left to return to the home page of the resource. So to review, from the home page of the digital archive, we click on the right-hand side, this light bulb Learning Center button to reach the Learning Center. And then to go back into the resource itself, click the banner to reach the home page. In this next example, we're looking at a different kind of digital archive. The Telegraph Historical Archive, 1855 to 2016, contains nearly 150 years of this single publication, the influential paper, The Telegraph. From the home page, we do find the Learning Center button in the same place on the right-hand side in the toolbar. And the organization of this Learning Center will look very familiar. We have the same 4 steps and the same kinds of links, as well as the menu on the left-hand side. The specific content included in the Learning Center, of course, will be tailored for the particular archive that we're looking at, including your sample topics and searches, content advisory, and so forth. Do you remember where to find the research examples? It's in the third step here, under Read. We'll go to the research example and see, in this case, there are two different examples to explore with an explanation, one or more recommended documents to examine, sample research questions, and recommended searches to try. Okay. I also want to show a section here called Newspapers as Sources for the Gale Digital Archives that comprise of a single newspaper or a single publication rather than a grouping of different documents by theme, like in the case of the Refugees and Resettlement Archive. We'll have some context around that historians should know when they're trying to use historical newspapers or historical publications in their research. There are critical thinking questions for the researcher to start considering. Who wrote this newspaper? What is the slant of that publication? Is there a bias? And how is it a reflection of the time period in which it was written? There are wonderful critical thinking questions and different ways to think about and use and interact with this historical research, along with more sample research questions, again, divided between novice and advanced levels. Another feature I want to point out is this Get Link button in the upper right. The Get Link button appears throughout many Gale resources, and it creates a permanent bookmarked URL that will point somebody to whatever content you're looking at the time. So let's say I do want to focus on the research example. I can click Get Link and then copy this permanent URL, and I can put this embedded in my Learning Center as a research example into a library research guide, a LibGuide, a course syllabus, bibliographic instruction materials, or in an email to the student or student group I was helping. The Get Link does appear throughout the Learning Center. So if you want to share the information about the document citations, you can get the link for that section. Or if you want to point people to the different illustrative essays, you can get a link pointing to the essays section as well. So with the Get Link feature, you will be able to share the valuable content of the Learning Center itself with your audience, with the researchers and students that you're supporting, so that they have easier direct access to the recommended content. Currently, learning centers can be found in a dozen Gale archives, and our goal is to build learning centers for every Gale digital archive. Each learning center is unique, with instructional content tailored to that particular archive's topics and source collections. Best of all, learning centers are automatically enabled at no additional charge. If your institution has access to any of these digital archives, you already have access to the Learning Center inside of it. Before we go, I'd like to acknowledge the dedicated efforts of the Gale team that is bringing learning centers to fruition. Working within framework established by doctoral level instructional designers and content researchers, Gale's editorial team spent months delving into the archives to find exemplary primary sources that lent themselves well to instruction. Our subject matter experts created key research topics, fine-tuned sample searches, developed thoughtful and challenging research questions, and produced research examples, providing additional historical context where needed. Everyone who worked on learning centers has the same goal: to support the teaching and learning needs of our users with learning outcomes, ensuring the development of 21st century skills. If you'd like more information, please visit gale.com/academic/learning-centers. Or you can go to the website shown on your screen to reach out to a rep for more information.